Hello adventurers and welcome back to my channel. Now today I am in the van, but we are not yet on the road. However, I'm getting ready to hit the road in a couple of days. So one of the things that I like to do is always get in here and kind of do a once over organization, but especially if I'm going to be traveling with a friend, I comb through everything. Literally everything. Like everything. So many things. But today I thought I would be doing that while I share some tips for you guys to help you whenever you're packing up either for your first trip or for one of your mini trips that you're going on, or if you're preparing for van life just as a full-time thing. This will be helpful if you're caravanning with a friend. Now, first things first, these are my little shelves that I put everything in, and usually it's pretty organized. It's a little disorderly right now because some things aren't in their correct places. For example, that. But what I do is I always go through and inventory these so I know exactly what's in here. So I'm not worried about, do I already have this when I go in the grocery store? In other words, I make a list. I check it twice. I'm kind of like Santa like that. But I don't just do that whenever it's me. Whenever it is a friend, I also do this, and we make a shared note. In fact, you can see right here, this is the shared note that Riley and I have at this very moment of what she has and what I have. Now, why do we do this? Well, because if I already have some potatoes and Riley already has some potatoes, we know we don't need to go buy more potatoes. We also know that if I have potatoes and we want to go into the store and make a meal, we could think, ooh, we already have potatoes. What goes with that? And so it's something that we can reference from our phones at any point in time. And it helps us to be able to kind of divide and conquer. Now, one of the things that we started to do on our very first trip of doing this system was we would actually put who has it in their van so we would know how to find it better. And we may end up doing that as well. So for the time being, I'm just filling in the blanks with all the different things that I'm carrying. And Riley has done the same. And then whenever we collectively get together on the road, it'll all make more sense. It helps us with meal planning, meal preparing, and also not overspending or overbuying. Additionally, if we go into stores that are like discount stores, we can look through the list and see where some of these items might be less expensive at the discount store. And if we don't already have it, we can purchase it. Now, as you can imagine, with only this much room right here, I don't have a ton of room to put a lot of things. So packaging does matter. Instead of getting a box of potatoes, I usually will get either a smaller bag of potatoes, which has a proper serving size, or I will buy a box of potatoes, but then I'll take them out of the packaging. Very similarly to what I have done here. Now, whenever this came in a box, the box was about this big, and it was just a little bit wider than this package. These are some nice little crumbles that we can use, and all we have to do is hydrate them. These are vegan, and we decided that these were really tasty for like taco nights when we didn't want to have like regular ground beef or turkey. And so we purchased these. However, that box would have been bulky and not fit into as many places versus this that can just sit nice and flat in there and doesn't take up near as much room. Always remove your exterior packaging to save space in a small space like this. Now, I don't know how many of you guys that I've spoken to who hadn't taken things out of packages before, and now that you are doing that, you find all this extra room. That's part of what makes my small space work out for me, is that everything has a place, and within that space, everything can fit very easily. So whenever you're using packaging like this as opposed to rigid boxes, you use a much smaller footprint, and it is so handy. That was one of the things that was really helpful for me to figure out, and I'm glad that I could pass that on to you guys. But for all of those who hadn't been around, I'm hoping that that's helpful to you. Now, let's talk about a few other things that I have found to be super handy while traveling. Small bottles. Small bottles are perfect. Why carry around a huge bottle of something when it's just you or just you plus one? Instead of having a ginormous wing sauce, I have this little tiny wing sauce, which is perfect for an actual portion size for me. I found these to be very handy, and they're sold in the Walmart section for like $1 a piece. They are in non-breakable bottles. They're in plastic containers, which is actually better for van life. So that way, if something random happens and I have some form of impact fall where this falls off the shelf, I don't end up with sauce everywhere. Now, let me explain what happens whenever you have something like this, which is a glass bottle. You have to be very careful with a glass bottle in a moving space, especially when you're going up and down on bumpy roads. Because as you can imagine, this could hit anything and crack and leak, and it's just bad. So whenever I do, on the rare occasion, have something that only comes in a glass bottle, like this pasta sauce right here, I have to kind of insulate it with things that I know are going to keep it safe. Versus this guy, who I could literally toss around, beat up, nothing bad's coming of this, and I feel much more safe with something like this. So whenever you're looking for different items for your van journey, consider that glass breaks whenever it hits things. Plastic does not. Now, I know a lot of people would prefer to use glass because then they could use it over and over and over, and I totally understand that. But if you do, make sure that you have a way to protect anything glass. Let me tell you a bad story about whenever I learned this lesson the hard way. Way back in 2020, when I first started traveling in the van, right after I had come out of the car and the tent and into the van, I was on one of my maiden voyages, and I was just living kind of willy-nilly trying to figure things out because I had never had this much space to move around in. And I realized, you're looking at my space going, it's so tiny. But this is way more than I had in my tiny car and my tent. I had a bottle that was not much bigger than this bottle right here. It was filled with honey, and I loved that honey. It was so tasty. I'd have it in my tea. I would put it in all sorts of stuff. It was delightful until all of a sudden something hit it. It shattered everywhere, and I didn't know it. And by the time that I figured out, it was everywhere. And that's because glass doesn't fare as well on the road. Now, I'm not saying you cannot have glass in a van. You can. There's lots of people who do it. I am saying you have to be a little bit more cautious with glass, and at that point, I was not aware of that. So after that, anytime I get a glass like this, I am very, very cautious. I also try not to put any glass in my refrigerator because unless it's packed in there in just the right way, if I have to hit my brakes and that pops forward, guess what? Then I have a problem in my fridge too. So that's my story as to why glass is not necessarily your van life friend. Keep that in mind. Now, my next tip to you guys is bulk items. Bulk items are great because you can get items that you are interested in and you can put them in portion sizes or larger than portion sizes in little Ziplocs, which you pull the air out and then they don't take up as much room. For example, if I were to buy tortellinis like this at my local Walmart, you can get them in the refrigerator section for like $8, which is ridiculous. Or you can get these in the dry section for about $4, which is slightly better, but again, it's not this many of them. It's about half this amount. Instead, I like to try to find stores that have bulk items like Winco. Winco is great. If you have one near you, please check it out. They have these tubs where you can just scoop as much or as little as you would like, and then you can get the items in bulk that you know you're going to use quite a bit. These are delightful because I can put them in a tortellini soup. I can make them as regular pasta. I can serve them by themselves, or I can accompany them with a protein. And these are wonderful because they have a wide variety of different uses. And I have several items that are like that. Let me show you another one. Chia seeds. Yeah, they have those at Winco as well. And what I do with these is I just put them into a controllable space as opposed to a large bulky item bag. And then whenever I'm ready to use them, I can just dump the amount that I need in there and then I'm good to go. I then keep these bags and recycle them where this is always going to be a chia seed bag and this will always be a pasta bag. That way I'm reusing the items that I have. Which brings me to my next thing that will be helpful to you guys. Reusing bags like this is great, but reusing bags like this, even better. These are reusable Ziplocs that you can actually wash out. They are a thicker material than the thinner kind of plastic here. They last a lot longer, and they do have them where they zip like this, or you can also get them where they have the zips like these. I definitely recommend these for your van life journey because they are so helpful. I have had these for like 3 years, these little things right here. I can usually get a good like 4 or 5 uses out of these and then they start to like be weird. But these, I can just wash them and then dry them upside down over like a cup, and I can use them for a very, very long time. Now, I will say this, the plastic on these, if you put like a pasta sauce or something in them, it does get stained. It does. That's just how it is. So when you're putting your dry goods in them, maybe only use some of them for your dry goods, and then your liquids could be another set of these. I don't know, unless it doesn't bother you that they're stained, in which case, use away. Now, earlier we were speaking about the honey, and this is how I purchase my honey now. I have these little honey packets, which gives me my first layer of defense. It's a nice little container. It's a single serving, so I don't end up with like a gooey top like you do sometimes on the bottles. This is great. But then additionally, I put them in a bag, so even if one of these does burst, it's contained in the bag, which is again why you just check your bags every so often to make sure that they're good. But this has been a lifesaver, such a lifesaver. Again, I'm not saying you can't have glass, but I am saying be mindful. Just be mindful. Now, my next tip to you guys is when you have similar items, check your expirations, figure out which one has the shorter shelf life. Whenever you're doing that, then put the one that needs to be used up first in the front, and then the one that doesn't have to be used quite as quickly in the back. And that way, when you're pulling, you always pull in order of the dates that they need to be used by. Now, typically, van groceries don't last that long because it's a smaller space. But with items like this that you can bulk buy so that you have them when you're in a remote space, it is a little bit better just to kind of give yourself that extra little added security of, oh, I'm not wasting things because I'm putting things kind of in a more manageable order. And then whenever you're placing them into your shelves, make sure that you're aware of, okay, this is going to be where I pull from first, instead of just reaching in all willy-nilly and being like, oh yeah, today I'm going to have this. Be intentional with how you find your food and also how you use your food. And that'll keep you from throwing things away just because you might have gotten it lost on a shelf somewhere, because that can happen. Okay, everything is kind of in order, and I have all of my sauces that line the front so I can easily get to them, as well as some of my seasonings. So I have a variety of different hot sauces, again, all in little plastic bottles, so I can try out new things, but whenever I am not using them, it's secure. And that's my other tip to you guys. Make sure no matter what you have your setup to be, make sure that everything is in a place so it doesn't make rattling noises. Now, you might not think that the rattling noise is going to bother you, but one of the things that shows you is that if something has the ability to wiggle, that if you get on the wrong road, that is going to pop up off the shelf, because things that rattle don't stay in place. So having a place that it is nice and solid and consistently in a space right there, not only accounts that everything is in order before you take off on the road, but also it's going to keep you from having to pick up as many things off of your bed or the floor after you've been on the road. Now, I've been in the van since 2020, and along the way, I have picked up a lot of stuff. I've pulled up a lot of things. I've reorganized a lot of stuff. And now whenever you guys hear me talking about that I take a test drive in the van before I head off anywhere, it's so that I don't hear the rattling. Because let's face it, guys, not everything is going to be like this where it can just tuck into a spot. And if something like this doesn't have a space, here are all those things inside. Each and every one of those things can rattle. And if those things then catapult through your van because you don't have them secured, they could end up as a projectile in your front seat, not just a mess for you to clean up in the back seat. So I hope these tips are helpful to you guys. I definitely encourage you to set up a little document with friends if you're traveling together. It is so handy. In fact, I just finished filling out my portion of the document, and now I kind of know what I need to be adding to my shelf. There's not a lot of things that I'll need to go and pick up at the store for dry goods. However, it is nice to know which ones I'm lacking a little bit of. For example, I had that one bag of potatoes, but I also have 3 tiny little 1-portion servings of potatoes, so that if I am meeting up with Riley, she can have a portion and I can have a portion. Or if I'm by myself, I can just have that 1 portion and it's already like put together for me. So yeah, little things along the way are things that you learn. Taking things out of packaging, making sure things are secured, making sure that you feel comfortable and confident in your space is a big, big deal. You don't have to have all the answers starting out. None of us do. And that's the whole point. We pass on knowledge that we've gained along the way, and all of these things have been things that I've had to learn somewhat the hard way, like the honey story. But remember, guys, we're not here for a long time, but we are here for a good time. Have a couple more days of getting myself together, and then we're hitting the road to a really, really big adventure. Meeting up with Riley and maybe a few of our other friends. We'll see. Until next time, guys. Bye.